Welcome all of you to our next class. In last class, we finished all topics in second module. Now we are going to see different topics in module 3. Module 3 is entirely dedicated to inspecting various vulnerabilities related to operating systems alone. As operating system is considered as one of the most important software in our system, finding out their vulnerabilities and taking appropriate remedial measures to prevent attacks on such vulnerabilities is very important. Even if we have some loopholes in some application software in our system, we can cope up by just uninstalling that application software, and other parts of the operating system or any other application software will not much be affected by an attack on a particular application software. But in the case of an operating system, if some attack happens on operating system, the entire system will be under threat. That's the most important point we have to remember. So such kind of attacks must be blocked at any cost. Now, as we know, most dominant two operating systems nowadays, almost all of us are using Windows and Linux. Various distributions of Windows and Linux are utilized for desktop systems, for laptops, etc. In even for even in scientific areas also, they are making use of various versions of these operating systems. And as all of us know, this Windows OS is proprietary software. It is paid one. It is developed by Microsoft. We it is not it is advised not to use an pirated version of Windows operating system. But for using that, we have to pay a particular amount of money, and for getting support also we may have to give more money for extending their service. But in the case of Linux, it is free and open source, and many features are available free of cost, and so that updation and support all are really in an extended fashion when compared to Windows, and everything is free of cost also. If we want, we can contribute to such we can contribute certain amount of money to their research research fund also. If needed, we can do that also. Otherwise, we can download any open source software free of cost. There is some traction of Linux OS, and it has a good expert support also. For any issue we are facing, we can just query in their discussion forums, and we can get the problem solved by applying the instructions given in such forums. So that's a big advantage of Linux: free, open source, and big support is also provided online. But in the case of Windows, all these are absent. So that's one of the main reason why government is also promoting the use of open and free open source software for education purpose and for office purpose also. Now, as we know, Windows is more vulnerable to attacks. It has many defects also, but ease of use is the most attracting part of Windows OS. Nowadays, you can see that various GUI supported attractive distributions of Linux are also available. One among them is Ubuntu. We all are really familiar with Ubuntu OS. We can use Ubuntu OS just like we use Windows OS. There is no much difference, you can see. Now, as we know, Windows is having more troubles. So, three-fourths of this module is dedicated to inspecting the vulnerabilities related to Windows operating system, various tools used for Windows OS, and how to prevent such attacks by examining the remedial tools. Similarly, Linux in the last portion of module 3 is dedicated for Linux OS. Here also we inspect vulnerabilities, tools for identifying vulnerabilities, and countermeasures against Linux attacks. That's a sum up of our third module, operating system vulnerabilities. Mainly Windows and OS and Linux are examined here. Now we may move to our third module. As the first topic, we may list out various vulnerabilities or the main areas where we can find vulnerabilities, and later we will examine all these areas in much more detail to see what are the vulnerabilities existing in such areas. So we move on to the first point listed here as a Windows OS vulnerability. Now, default installations of Windows OS can contain serious vulnerabilities that attackers exploit. That is the one important point that all of us must understand. When, as a normal user, when we install an operating system, especially Windows OS, we may go for automatic installations or default settings may be installed. We do not go for manual installations. Giving going for automatic installation is very easy. As far as a user is concerned, we don't have much to do with that. We have to just click on certain next buttons and finally install button. But when we go for manual installations, we can selectively install certain features by inspecting the strength and weakness of those features. But in the case of automatic installations, we don't have any choice to make such preferences. The problem with such automatic installation is that as Windows is very weak when compared to Linux, giving automatic installation is risky. That means many features are prone to attacks. They are very weak, so that such features installed in our operating system will be always aimed by the hackers. They may easily attack our system through these weak points or these loopholes of our operating systems. So whenever you install an operating system, care must be given in not giving automatic installations. If possible, you may select manual installations, and by understanding various features, various security features of our operating system, you may selectively install features. That's one of the most effective remedial measures we can follow. And in the case of Windows vulnerabilities, you can trust a website, namely CVE. CVE website is a very helpful tool for identifying various vulnerabilities related to our Windows OS. By opening that Windows OS, you may wonder lakhs of vulnerabilities have been listed there. So prior to installation of any Windows related tool, you may go to CVE website in order to find out the vulnerabilities and try to keep a distance from all these vulnerabilities while installing Windows related tool by following manual installation. So that is one of the effective tool that experts, both ethical hacker and hackers, are making use of for their own purposes. Second point is vulnerabilities in Windows file system include lack of ACL support. That is one of the most dangerous vulnerability that exists in FAT file systems. In the older versions of Windows distributions, you can see FAT32 was used. Before that, it was for FAT16. Before that, it was for FAT12. In all these FAT versions, there was no ACL support. That means access control list. In Linux, you can easily identify the permissions given to certain files. That means certain group of peoples have only read permission on that file. Certain other groups have read and write permissions also. Very few or a single administrator may be having all three permissions: read, write, and execute permissions. Such kind of restriction is not available in FAT file systems. You may be knowing more features of file systems that you have studied in operating system subject in last semester. You may refer various key points related to file systems there in the textbook of operating file systems you referred in the last semester. And this is one of the most dangerous vulnerability of FAT. And the latest Windows distributions are making use of NTFS file system. This ACL support is included in NTFS, but NTFS lacks one. It is having big trouble. That means it does support ADS. ADS is used by the Microsoft people for hiding their proprietary files. By adding more amount of information into a file using this ADS, its file size will not be increased, its function will not be altered, so that Windows OS or third party antivirus software installed in Windows OS will not be aware about these things. So that's a tricky thing that is used by Microsoft people for hiding their proprietary files. But these expert hackers can exploit these features to add their own malicious code to such files, so that that malicious code also will be undetected by Windows security features and by third party antivirus software. So that is most dangerous thing with the ADS. ADS stands for alternate data streams. Now third point is another three important tools, strong points used with Windows OS, but which can trickyly exploited by hackers also. First one is RPC, remote procedure call. That means one application running on one system can control the application or the function running on another system, a remote system. This idea has been developed and utilized in initial stages for good purpose only, but the hackers can make use of this RPC in order to unleash attack from a remote PC. So it's an inter-process communication mechanism that allows a program running on one host to run code on a remote host. Similarly, BIOS implemented in network in internet, basic input-output mechanism. That's also if we do it on internet, it's a riskier thing. Then about SMB. SMB stands for server message blocks, using which it is very easy to collect usernames and password hashes. So these three strong points of Windows operating system can be exploited by hackers for malicious actions. Now next point is in Windows null sessions and default installations can leave passwords blanks and resources unprotected, causing major problems. So just by considering the factor of easiness, we may not use passwords for logging into our Windows. That is one big mistake we do with Windows OS. Why? Even we know that Windows OS is so much vulnerable. Even though we take appropriate security measures, and giving not giving appropriate passwords for securing our Windows login is a big mistake that all of us are usually do, just by considering the easiness as a main factor. While using a computer or a critical system, we should not consider easiness as a major factor. We should give more priority to security than easiness. So such kind of actions should be avoided by the experts. And the last point is many Windows services leave Windows systems vulnerable to attack, especially web service and IIS. This IIS, Internet Information Service or server, is the default server available with a Windows distribution. It is not related to Windows Server OS. It is a server available with any Windows operating system, so that you can develop your web pages, and you can configure the IIS to contain your web pages, so that you can display the web pages in browsers easily. So using older version of iOS is very risky. In the case of proprietary software, not only proprietary software, using any when using any software, we must make sure that we are using the latest one. That means updated one. Uh, that means whenever hackers find some loopholes in the current version of software, these developers may find out those vulnerabilities, and they may correct it, and they may release a new one, latest one. So without installing updates, we will be always under danger, under the threat of being hacked. So such kind of things should be kept in our mind. Now that's all about the various areas of Windows OS where we can find out vulnerabilities. Now in the next session we will examine in detail all these sessions of Windows OS to find out the vulnerabilities. Okay, thank you.